Welcome to the Supernova Lab District 6 Technologies Mastery Series, where we have conversations with industry game changers in the Caribbean and in the diaspora. I'm Jonathan Sylvester, co founder of District 6 Technologies, along with my business partner, Javon Robinson. We will lead you through a series of discussions and give you insights to critical topics impacting Barbados and the wider Caribbean. In line with Supernova Labs Arc Academy's mission, this six-part series is designed to equip innovators, researchers, and emerging founders with access to insights from our region's best minds to build mission-driven experiments. Today, my esteemed colleague Javon will be discussing AI for Good, a critical take on artificial intelligence and the public interest with Mr. Abdul Oboh. Abdul brings a rare blend of deep technical expertise, public sector experience, and private sector delivery, allowing him to interrogate AI not as a theory, but as a deployed reality across government and industry. If you're a public sector leader, regulator, CIO, CTO, technology manager, policy analyst, or a civic technologist, this is a critical episode to tune into. Public value lies in tempering hype with responsibility, helping institutions ask better questions before adopting AI systems. That being said, spread the word, like and subscribe to this series, and join our community. Over to you, Javon.
Thank you very much, Jonathan, and good evening to you, Abdul. Welcome to the podcast. How are you doing this evening?
Thanks for having me. Thank you, Jonathan and Jiva.
Excellent. It's wonderful to have you here. AI for Good. We're here to talk about that. A critical take on artificial intelligence and the public interest. You know, Abdul, the phrase AI for Good, it has become almost a default narrative in technology conversations, if you like. From your perspective, my first question to you this evening as we talk, from your perspective, working across both government and industry, what does that phrase actually mean? And where do you think it could become misleading?
Thanks, Jiva, for that question. So AI for good, it's a very good phrase and has become very popular because it's very important for us to be specific about AI meant for good because AI can be meant for evil as well, right? So around government establishment, private sector, AI has become very popular. So in fact, let's add machine learning and artificial intelligence because they go hand in hand. However, we've been able to use AI across different aspects of government, right? In the area of data governance, in the area of system enhancement, in the area of how we do things better. However, there's a lot of misconception around AI first, and also misuse of AI. However, the importance for us to emphasize the need of using AI for good is very, very important. It's sacrosanct for us to understand that AI, in as much as it has become popular, it could be used for negative vices rather than good. So AI for good is a actually good phrase that resonates the need for us to use it for bettering our lives as organizations and as communities. Yeah.
You spoke about AI, bettering our lives as organizations, as communities. Yourself, Abdul, you've spent over 2 decades, working across sectors like financial services, manufacturing, education, and government. How, in your view, has the conversation around artificial intelligence evolved during that time, and particularly within public institutions?
Fantastic. So, for example, I support an application that manages about $1.6 billion of transfer payments in Ontario government. 3 years ago, we used to rely a lot on customer service agents to client, calls from, external, users to internal users. So what we did, we replaced, I won't say we replaced their jobs, right? They were repurposed for other things. I introduced AI agents. AI agents whereby we now introduced things like, knowledge base. Again, like I said, machine learning and artificial intelligence will work hand in hand. Knowledge base where AI agents rely on to get information and respond to different, customers, both internal and external, to actually, give them answers. They are faster, they are not grumpy, they won't call in sick, and also They, yeah, they can give you the answers within few seconds. So they don't need to be in a call with somebody and tell you, okay, you know what, can I hold on for a minute? Let me attend to somebody. So the responses are swift and fast, and they have the ability to queue all your answers as they come, and they give you the answers right after one another. So that has been a very huge game changer for my organization in terms of providing response to both internal clients and external clients using artificial intelligence.
Thank you so much for that response. And you stated something there. They won't call in sick. They won't talk back and different things like that. What I found intriguing, particularly within government institutions, a lot of people feel that they have a job for life. How has it been in terms of your experience dealing with persons who feel that AI is here to replace them and their job is no longer secure? How has that been
So,
in terms of the interactions you have had?
first of all, as an individual and as a professional, I don't believe in that philosophy job for life. Does that make sense? So, yeah, you cannot, no, people cannot walk in their graves. So, technically, so some way, somehow, you have to leave that role. However, there's a misconception again that AI is going to replace individuals. It's not completely accurate. AI is going to make our lives better, drive things better. Just like in the times of automation, when we started full scale digitization across North America and the world, people were scared we are going to lose jobs. No, rather than spending 7 hours doing a task that would have taken you 2 minutes, you now do that task 2 minutes, free up time to do some other stuff. So, for example, I use AI. I manage a lot of projects. So, prior, I will go into one of my tools that I use to manage the tasks that my team members are doing, maybe tickets for the next deployment. I'll go line by line and be writing them down, typing on Excel and collate. Sometimes it takes me 5 hours to do that. What do I do now?
Correct.
I go to Copilot and tell Copilot, please, can you compile all the list of tickets for me from this Jira board? It speeds that for me. All I just need to do just to validate what Copilot has given, just eyeball the outcome. That's all. It doesn't mean I'll rely on it. Keep in mind, it's still AI, it's still a machine, right? It's prone to have errors. So I just eyeball to ensure that the information that I'm getting from Copilot aligns with what I have on my board. What has that done? It has reduced my product, so it has increased my productivity and reduced the time I spend in collating tickets, 5 hours with less than 10 minutes. Has
You
my
know,
job been replaced? No, it hasn't.
one of the terms that I've heard in this whole conversation about AI is that the new coding language is now English. You no longer simple everyday individuals can now go into an AI tool and tell it what to do, and it will present for them even a basic minimalistic representation of what they ask for. Before, this was not possible. You had to know complicated coding language, etc., etc. So, and one of the other conversations I've been privy to is that AI is not necessarily going to, and I think you just basically alluded to that, not necessarily going to replace you on the job, but more so individuals who don't know how to use AI. They're the ones who would be at a disadvantage. You'd agree?
You see, Jivon, there's something that I've observed, right? You see, as a technology professional, I don't rely on I don't rely on textbook. I rely on practicality. People forget the fact that AI was not created by God, right? I don't want to be religious here, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
AI relies on somebody sitting down, building logic to perform certain functions. So if somebody says AI is now the new sorry, quote, the new language is English, that's not correct. Before AI can understand English, there should be a fundamental code behind the scene for it to understand English. So people are forgetting that coding is still necessary. We get things like, oh, AI is replacing developers. That's a lie. Who built AI?
Yeah. Yeah.
Who
Yeah.
built the large, models for language processing? Developers.
Hmm.
So if somebody
Yes.
tells me, I think the language of choice these days is Python, that sounds a little bit realistic because a lot of agents that are built rely on Python as a language, right? But again, as a developer that has a lot of experience, if you know Java, you can write Python. You just need a few weeks to catch up with. Does that make sense? So there's a lot of misconception now, which is normal in technology. Any new innovation that comes on board, there are a lot of professors that know so much. They do research that are skewed towards one direction. Hmm. That's exactly what I see. But quite frankly, I don't agree that like again, English is not because you can type Spanish into ChatGPT, for example. Is that English? No. You can chat,
Okay.
yeah, you can chat Mandarin into ChatGPT. It will respond. But
Yes.
what is responsible for that reactive response is code, logic behind the scene. That's responsible.
Yeah. So the coders and they're still very much important, even with the advancement of the digitized tool and the
That's correct.
automation that
So
AI
coders
provides.
should learn new skills that will align into having the ability and proficiency to play in the space where we have what AI and machine learning. That's the thing. Not just writing code for enterprise grade applications and stuff like that, because most of those applications now have integration with what agents, AI agents and stuff like that.
Yeah, yeah. No, very no, very useful conversation. We're really enjoying the insights that you're providing here for us, on the podcast this evening, Abdul. One of the things that both Jonathan and myself we've noticed is that many governments they're racing to, and I say governments, I should say institutions also. They're racing to adapt AI solutions to improve efficiency, service delivery. You spoke about it just a while ago in your presentation. What do you think are some of the biggest misunderstandings, public institutions particularly, because this is the field that you're in, public institutions? What are some of the biggest misunderstandings they have about what AI can realistically achieve? And I use the term realistically with emphasis.
Yes. So in terms of realistic expectations, one of the major challenge which you mentioned earlier on is fear of the unknown, specific to job replacement. So behind their minds, that's one of the fears that they have, especially when you find yourself in government establishments that have a large presence of union members. The union will kick back at different kinds of uh, ideas that are coming. And also, even when these ideas are adopted, then implementation is not a problem itself. Right? So it takes years for these things to be actualized. But in reality, the challenges that they normally have in government is pretty much red tapeism, approval from one table to the other, so the whole, everybody, for example, in the island of Caribbean, we need to sign on a document before something will be implemented, right? So
Yeah,
just like that can actually set things back. But what I can say, based on my experience of working in public service, is it's important for them to start with a proof of concept, right? And see, okay, how can this AI solution meet this specific need? And once they do that proof of concept, what will be the impact, positive and negative? Because everything that has an advantage has a disadvantage. That will also drive a lot of things. But if you look at the positives are more because it's going to drive. I was going through something tonight, a huge research institute in Africa. They are actually implementing AI in terms of, managing their natural resources in Nigeria. I was amazed. A project, artificial intelligence, somebody sent me research. So things like this have to be looked at critically, not looking at I'm going to take shit from somebody's table. You're not taking from anybody's table. The reality is that we need to understand that we have challenges, face those challenges head on, look at the impact this kind of innovation will bring to us, both negative and positive. But I can assure you, the impact will be more positive rather than negative. That's the truth.
definitely, definitely. Jono, definitely. I know you're itching to get in on the conversation.
Yeah, for
Chatting to
sure.
Abdul is so insightful. So
Let me
yeah,
jump in with a question there for
yes,
Abdul. So
sure.
yeah, Abdul, based on that and, taking in the Caribbean context into what you're saying, I mean, would you say, with the landscape of the AI vendors and technology providers externally, we're a small region and there's a lot of noise around AI. How do government institutions begin to do things like vendor selection, and who do we trust and who do we go to for AI expertise, and how do we clear away the noise to get to what we really need? I think that's my
That's a
question.
fantastic question. So first of all, one of the things in terms of selection will be identify a need, right? Go through your internal processes, understand your requirements, go through the procurement, maybe publish an RFP, request for information. But one thing I want to tell you also, the caveat should be included in any such requisition by any of the Caribbean government. What do I mean by that? AI is technology provided by maybe the big companies like Microsoft, Amazon, Oracle, all these guys. AI runs not in the sky, but somewhere in the data center. It's an opportunity for Caribbean government to also attract them to establish presence on the islands. You have power. So I don't want my data to reside in California. So technically, by law, if my data is residing in a California data center, that means the US government has no recourse to any Caribbean government to get access to that data. So there's a huge opportunity apart from making your lives better in the Caribbean, but by also attracting business. I don't know if they already have data centers in the Caribbean. I'm not sure, but that's an opportunity. So I can assure you, it will be more comfortable if Microsoft has a data center in Barbados, Jamaica. They are connected to that. They are more comfortable. They are broader islands. Your data center is in Germany. You are doing business in Barbados, right? So
Yes.
technically, government information resides in Germany. So the German chancellor can be crazy. Maybe another Hitler comes up one day and says, "This information, I want to grab it." You have no recourse. That's the truth. So
So the
that's
so the
basically
idea of data the idea of data
governance.
sovereignty
Yeah.
sorry, the idea of data sovereignty becomes very critical to
Correct.
government institutions, because you
Correct.
want to ensure you know where your data is at any given point in time, and typically you want that in within your jurisdiction
Jurisdiction.
or within your
Yeah.
borders.
In Africa, for example, in Nigeria, where I'm from originally, we're having challenges to actually actualize that. Our data,
Mm,
for organizations, government organizations use it like cloud services. Their data centers are in South Africa. Can you imagine? But
right,
what
Right.
is responsible for that? We have a fundamental infrastructure problem, power. Caribbean, you don't
right.
have that issue.
We do in some islands.
In some islands, but I'm talking in Africa, it's a large scale issue. Power. The whole state, 2 months of power. Can you imagine? Well,
Yeah.
I don't run a data center on generator or solar.
Mm.
Yeah.
So, a question in this whole idea of data sovereignty, Abdul, that Jono has brought up, it's a very interesting angle, actually. How do we get the policymakers? I know in the bigger countries, where we live in Canada, United States, for sure, they believe they put the money behind the investment that's required. But from, let's say, the developing world, Africa, Nigeria, where you're from, the Caribbean, where Jono and myself, where we're from, how do we get our policymakers to come on stream understanding the importance of data sovereignty? What do you feel we need to do more of to incite that conversation?
I think a lot of enlightenment and training is important, but I can assure you, they all know. They do know. They know.
Yeah.
One thing is to know, one thing is to ensure that
So,
you comply.
okay. So basically, it's for them to basically. Go ahead.
Yeah. For example, I can tell you,
Sorry, go ahead.
Nigeria, they are aware that data sovereignty and governance is critical for governance. But a lot of organizations, their data resides in South Africa. They may be comfortable because
Mm,
South Africa is, a broader African nation, right? But typically, I work for government of Ontario. Our data cannot reside in the US. It's impossible. In fact, that's one of the things we tell you
yeah.
when you are bringing any solution to us. It's impossible. You must tell us that in the data center, you are going to connect to Vancouver, Toronto, British Columbia, all some other areas. But anything outside Canada is a no. In fact, we block the traffic. Immediately it connects because everything is all about failover. Immediately the IP changes and it shows to you our system is shut down. It cannot connect. Impossible. We can't.
Impossible.
So these are the kind of things
Understood.
that,
So
yeah. Go ahead.
those are the so from an infrastructure perspective, I mean, what you're talking about is infrastructure, right? So the connectivity, where your data center lives. But just to bring it back to the idea of AI and, the language models and ensuring that we have a good, clear concept around that. I mean, anybody who's programming AI, all right, are we building AIs for unintended consequences, right? So, from a system architecture perspective, how can institutions identify and mitigate against algorithmic bias, for instance, before deploying an AI?
A lot of things that we do, things like privacy impact assessment. So, for example, if you deal with personal information, a lot of risk assessment has to be done. And one of the things I would say from my own experience, I'll recommend government in the Caribbean to build their own agents themselves.
Okay.
Yeah. So that algorithm bias they're talking about can be mitigated from that because technically you know what you built your agent for with specific requirements. And what that does again is you're not providing the ability for people to upskill, like local resource to understand how those things work. And you can see entrepreneurs actually spin from that. But relying on commercial off-the-shelf solutions like the big organizations buying solutions from there is like you're being fed food that has been made already, but you don't know the ingredients that the food was made from. That's exactly what it means.
So so would you say like your recommendation is for local institutions, even local businesses, private sector businesses, looking or within your market for resources and solutions versus looking to what's in the media being ChatGPT,
Nah,
Claude, and
yeah.
all of these other models?
The example I gave, we built that Python. The one I told you for the customer service, we built it internally. We don't we use Copilot for like summarizing emails. Those simple like the lightweights. The heavy lifting
Light
we put is
tasks.
not we can't use those guys
Right.
because remember
So,
remember the AI model runs on existing database and on the internet. So it goes from what it has within and goes out to get information.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So
So
So,
if it's pulling information from the internet, how do we keep AI for good? Right? I mean, if
that's a
it's
good question.
drawing on all kinds of resources, how do you, I don't want to say sensitize or restrict, but do you filter
you can.
information?
Yes, that possibility
Okay.
exists even with the co-pilots and the other companies, right? There is a lot of level of sensitivity that can be set. If you build your own, you can say, I don't need information from certain kind of sites and stuff like that. You can include a lot of conditions. It's logic, right? Behind the scene. So that can prevent
Right.
it. Just like in the academia, you cannot use references from YouTube or one random website. It has to be peer reviewed. Does that make sense? That's exactly what
Yes.
what is all about. Yeah.
hmm So, as we're talking about AI for good, and in light of the question that John just asked you, one of the things that has come to my mind particularly, Abdul, is that we talk about AI, we talk about the usability of AI, ChatGPT, Claude, all these different things. However, let's say in Barbados and much of the wider Caribbean and much of the developing world, we hear stuff about deep fake, for instance, and all the
Yes.
different things that AI could be done that is not good. So, firstly, do you think it has to be a situation where ethical AI integrity, has to be, well, I wouldn't say brought into the public domain en masse, but more so brought into the education system where students are now begin to be sensitized as to the new vernacular, seeing that AI is so prevalent?
That question is a very interesting question. So you mentioned, I'll start with the last part, AI being brought into academia. For me, I think that's a huge risk because
Okay.
what I'm finding out right now, a lot of people don't think any longer. Yes. No, yeah, it's a huge problem. Yeah, because for those of us that have gone through education, we've done a lot of stuff, right? We can cohabit with AI, right? For
Yes.
people that are just starting life, relying so much on AI, that's a huge, huge risk. I'm telling you. Yeah, because right now people don't want to use their brains. But remember, AI was built by people, not spirits.
Right.
People sat down and put their thinking hats on and came up with an idea. So if they didn't think, how will you have access to the technology that you're using now? I'm not a fan of. I don't learn my kids. I don't let them use AI for any stuff. They have to use their brain, think. That's how innovation comes into play by using your brain, right? For those of us that we are very busy, we have a lot of stuff. We've done a lot of work, heavy lifting. We want to now use AI to leverage certain things. For example, the example I gave, customer service, introducing AI to serve your clients better. That's service delivery. That is for good. Skewing the thinking of kids or teenagers. They can't do anything any longer. To write a simple email, tell AI, write email for me. Right. No, thank you.
Yeah, yeah. You
So
know
to
what?
Javon's point, that the ethical side of it, do we start to introduce programs that introduce the kids to
Ethical use of
ethical
AI.
AI,
Correct. Yeah,
use of AI?
correct. And just to let you know, a lot of schools have also implemented anti-AI tools to check
Yeah.
students also.
You're doing something that I think a lot of parents possibly listening to this broadcast particularly may consider adapting in terms of not allowing their children, I should say, to use AI for homework or different things like that, because it's I mean, it's just saying you brought that up. It's been one of my concerns, quite frankly, Abdul, that people no longer think, or a lot of people no longer think. Everything is put into AI and it's just generated, So, from writing, and particularly for school, writing essays or doing mathematical equations, complex equations that require you to think about logic and sequence and different things like that. And it's good that you're saying, like, hey, you don't allow your kids to use AI for their schoolwork. I take it you mean, right?
Yeah, yeah. That's right. I don't like my first one is in computer science, right? University. So you have to like the language they are learning to write was developed by somebody, not
Yeah,
AI.
yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
why will you now rely on AI that was created by someone else? So if that guy refused to think, how will you have access to AI? Think about that.
So let me ask you then, Abdul, do you think then that AI only serves the public good when, let's say, governance and accountability are deliberately designed? And what does meaningful governance around AI actually look like in practice?
Governance is extensive, right, in the use of AI. So it can come from public sector, private sector, even from a religious standpoint. You can see a lot of stuff on the internet now. It's difficult for you to tell what is actually real. Are not weaponizing AI. So, like I said, there's nothing that cannot be weaponized, either for good or for evil. That's the truth. The point of governance is extensive. How it can be, like can be taught. So, for example, in the academia I just mentioned, they introduced a lot of AI agents, whereby if you turn in your assignment, AI will run through it. If that information was not done by you, they can tell that it wasn't done by you, and you're going to get a zero for that, right?
Mhm,
Because
mhm.
because it's not
You didn't
discouraging
think.
for innovation. Exactly. But in public service, in service delivery, it can be of great use to drive or make our lives better, not the ways. So that first question you asked, AI for good, yes, it's good to be very specific. When you say AI in general, oh, AI is for evil also. But do you
Yep.
understand? So this
Yes.
specific phrase, AI for good, is very critical. So in terms of public service, government, private sector, the use of AI has a lot of advantages. But like I mentioned, there's some, of course, is right. And there's no kind of case you cannot make. You can justify any case, to tell me that AI is bad, but I can tell you no, I disagree, because you can actually make to be very effective in how you do business, how you deliver to your clientele base, and how to even make your community live better, right? AI has gone into agriculture right now, weather forecast, looking at historical data for the last 100 years. to predict, okay, we're going to have this much amount of rain in the next few days. They know when to
Yeah,
plant and all that. That is AI for
yeah,
good.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Not
That's
putting
that
your
that
face
that's
on Nicki Minaj face and saying using Javon's voice, for something. Yeah, that you understand? Yeah.
that's not AI for good.
That's not AI for good at all. So Abdul, I mean, if you were advising a government agency, whether it be, whether it be the Ministry of Energy, Ministry of Transport and Works, within a Caribbean context, what are the first steps that they should be taking before they consider implementing any form of AI into their processes?
That's, so I think the first step for me is we need to identify, you know, the kind of services that these establishments offer, right? If the services are client facing or internal facing, that's one. Then two, if the services are client facing or internal facing, sorry, external client facing and internal facing, what are the pain points that, because no system is perfect. There are a lot of issues out there. What are the pain points? From the pain points, we can now see, okay, these are the issues we've identified. What kind of solutions can we implement? And in implementing these solutions, what are we going to do? Are we going to bring in artificial intelligence, right? Or are we going to bring systems and integrate artificial intelligence into those systems to provide better service delivery? Everything in government is all about serving the people. If you know that. That's the key word. So serving the people both internally or externally. What are we trying to achieve? What are the issues that they are complaining of? So once we're able to identify these, then we can work everything backwards and see how we can address them. Because the idea is to move service delivery from maybe from 2 to 10 on the scale of 10, right? So that people can keep, telling you, okay, yeah, and politicians are the kind of things they want to hear, right? Because they want people to keep voting for them to remain in power. But you need to give the citizens something. They need to be happy about your delivery. They
Yeah,
don't really care if you are, if you are staying there for 20 years, but they want to be comfortable in whatever service that they're getting from you. So as a public servant, the most important thing is customer service. But that customer service is not just verbal, alteration of customer service, but how do you deliver this service to your clientele base, both internal and external? If they have issues, how are we going to resolve these issues? Because right now, AI is helping a lot of government do stuff. For example, they introduced AI procurement system, I think in one of the countries in Scandinavia because of fraud. So they don't have human beings handling their procurement any longer. Everything is done by AI, pre-qualification, award by AI. Fraud was caught up by 99.9%. The people are still there, yes, to still do the fiscal negotiation with people, but the outcome is produced by what? The system. Yeah, Scandinavian country.
so that's a brilliant example you just mentioned, and coming back to the developing world context, and I said developing world, the Caribbean, Africa, the global South. In terms of funding and finance is always an issue. So with governments, for instance, Abdul, with limited budgets, how do they level up in terms of having that internal expertise, so to speak, to oversee the AI vendors? Because you mentioned there what they've done in Scandinavia. So how do governments, with their limited finances, oversee these AI vendors and the external technology providers effectively?
One of the things that a lot of countries do is to go into partnership with these huge organizations, right? And create like an agreement, maybe like a 5, 10 year agreement over time. So it will be more like, how would I say, capital injection in form of technology, right? They're not giving you money, they are giving you technology. Maybe for something in return over a period of time. You have limited budget, maybe you can pay maybe $1 million every year because you can't pay the whole $20 million. Spread out for 10 years, pay 10 million as our investment, right? As part of that, maybe you give us a land to establish maybe one of our offices, sub-regional offices, have a data center there, establish one or two things. By doing that, they are bringing technology, they are creating local employment for people, They are building expertise locally also, and they are benefiting from the technology that they are providing. So it's a win-win for these developing countries, to have that kind of agreement. Like it's like a joint venture, right? Whereby they're not physically paying them money, but they are bringing technology, and over a period of time, you just give them. But even people provide even land, because land is an asset, it's money, right? It can be valued.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, for example, my
Yeah.
state I'm from in Nigeria right now, my state government has given a refinery a land to build a refinery for petroleum refinery. Yeah, that's the only contribution, but it's been
Oh, great.
monetized for them to have 5% stake in that refinery. That's investment. So there are a lot of ways you can attract the big techs to your organization, to your country.
Mm-hmm.
You understand?
Yeah. Understood. Understood.
Now taking a macro view, just taking the Caribbean context into consideration, we're typically consumers of technology from, America, Canada, Europe, Asia. We buy servers, we buy all of our infrastructure. It's typically a one-way flow. How do we now use AI to start to export services to some of those countries, to North America, to Canada, to Europe, to Africa, so that we can start to generate some foreign exchange into our islands and create new industry? What are your thoughts on that?
So I'll say my recommendation based on what I've observed in my country and where from originally is, first of all, build capacity in-house internally. Yeah. So it's gonna be like a 20 to 50-year plan to achieve that. Understand? Build capacity internally, establish tech hubs, right? Encourage students to go into STEM, right? Technology, learn programming, even incorporate that into education. Primary, let them learn simple Scratch programming language. High school, make it optional for people. It's very important for you to learn programming, not to be a developer, to think logically. Does that make sense? So these are the kind of ways so it starts gradually. So for example, what you mentioned now, exports. Sorry, you're a consumer of this hardware, IT hardware, right? But they're
Yeah,
actually being imported from China and India, not America. America doing a little bit.
yeah,
Their
right.
journey started from the time of Indira Gandhi.
Mm-hmm.
That's where it started. So, like I said, it's like a 20 to 50-year plan. But we need to start looking at building capacity internally in the Caribbean, encouraging people to go into STEM, not music, but into STEM.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I mean, taking like the Kenya model into consideration in the fintech space, they made a leapfrog in terms of how payments are done. I remember being in Kenya and nobody would accept my cash. Everybody was using M-Pesa, which is a mobile phone payment gateway, and it was built in conjunction with Safaricom, and there was a whole ecosystem around payments, receiving and making payments, and they actually made a huge leapfrog in terms of that technology. How does the Caribbean make the next leapfrog without going through the process of adopting some of the challenges that North America may have had or Europe may have had in competing with Asia when it comes to AI?
Like I said, it's still capacity. So, for example, the payments that you mentioned now, it actually started from Nigeria. Yeah,
Okay.
Okay.
it started from Nigeria. The guy that started the first payment gateway in sub-Saharan West Africa was my senior in high school. If you've heard of Switch, he's a billionaire now. Yeah, he started
All right.
just on his own. He didn't have a dime, a dollar, but he got investors that bought into his idea, and that was it. So all that companies started coming on. So it's the main switch, the main payment provider now in Nigeria. So that kind of thing is an idea that can fly in Caribbean. Remember, but it's not going to be done by government. It's going to be by people like you and I, but with the support from the government.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
So the public private sector relationship
It's
needs to
critical.
be is critical in
Mm.
order for those leapfrogs to happen. So, I mean, I think what you're saying is that, some of the governments need to ensure that the policies are in place, data protection is in place, there's a good framework, not just in any specific country, but I think as a group in the CARICOM where everybody's following the same rules and everybody can operate within those rules and, then start to build systems and solutions that are supported by all of the governments, right?
Correct. So, for example, we can say, you know what, Javon, let's start a payment portal for all the Caribbean countries. You can send money across the whole of Caribbean without any issues. What do we need? We need government support
Yeah.
because we need that license, right? But nobody will come. Oh no, these three black guys, they want to come and steal our money, right? So that
Yeah.
idea,
Yeah.
they don't
Yeah.
come up,
Yeah.
right? Need that support. So by the
Yeah.
time that support comes, we get license from Barbados, from Jamaica. Everybody come together. Technology is not an issue. Building is not a problem. And
It's
before I can send money from Barbados to Jamaica within 5 seconds. In 5 seconds, money is in your account. Before you know, you're going to have billions of transactions, and you're just charging a little fee. Before you know, multi-million-dollar industry is built. People are employed everywhere across the whole of Caribbean. Before you know, smaller companies will come up again under you. That's how it is. Before you know,
yeah.
economy has gone to another level.
Yeah. Yeah. So therefore, policy then, I from what I'm gathering from what you're saying, and throughout the whole context of our conversation here today, policy
It's
has to
not.
be
Oh,
primary.
it's critical. Yeah, it's key.
Yep, yep. And without the policy, because as you say, the technology is there. Building the stack is not really the issue. The issue is having the backing and the framework from a governmental level across the region, so to speak.
Fantastic. AI is great. We talk about AI, but the truth is that if you go goes to Barbados and say, you know what, let's look at major issues in agriculture. How can we implement AI? The next thing will tell you, you know what, you take 6 years to sign it into law.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. Nothing gets done.
And that's
Stagnation.
you
Yeah,
can't do it.
yeah.
You might end up in jail because they say you're trying to do something else. Yeah.
Yeah, I know, I know. It's been a very robust and quite interesting conversation we've been having here today, Abdul. And I just want to ask you, as we look to bring our discussion this evening to a close, where do you see the future of AI within your role, within the role of also, you operate on multiple facets. You're in the developed world, but you also have interest in the developing world. Where do you see the role of AI considering all those factors? Sorry.
AI has come to stay, but I'll still take you back to your first question. But AI for good has come to stay. As AI for good has come to stay, innovation will keep, being implemented to ensure that AI for bad is checkmate. Sorry, is checked just to ensure that we don't have issues. Because the truth is that AI for good will do a lot of good, but people will be blindsided by the fact that it's going to give you more good than evil. Because most time is the evil news that spreads faster than the good news. Unfortunately.
Yeah,
Yeah,
true,
correct,
true, true, true,
correct,
true.
correct.
So
Yeah,
it has come to stay. You cannot eliminate, even in cars, some cars, they practically speak to you. Even in North America, I think we are still behind. I was going through a documentary on YouTube. If you see the Chinese cars, those
Yeah,
guys are at another level.
level.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
There are a lot of Oratians in my team. The kind of technology those guys are exposed to is something else. So
yeah.
it's not going away. But the point is that it should not be recognized for evil. So that's where a lot of governance and oversight has to come into play, both in public sector, because the public sector has a key role to play. Government runs everything, right? The government says no, it's no. If they say yes, it's yes. So the governance and policy starts from there. Still taking you back to what you mentioned in terms of adoption.
Excellent, excellent. Jono, any final comments you'd like to make?
Abdul, you've given us some really good insight there on AI and how we need to be thinking about it. And I think we are, for the most part, just being exposed to what's happening in the world today. A lot of our institutions are having these conversations internally. I know certainly here in Barbados, our government has put a lot of resources into locally building systems quietly, but at the same time, taking examples from what's happening in the wider world. I think the biggest challenge that we have in the Caribbean is access to capital to continue to build these systems and pouring capital into our education system, focusing on developing robust technology courses that kids can really grapple into and stay ahead of the curve, pouring capital into small businesses that are developing and giving them challenges, giving them the business. So does a government institution take on smaller businesses to help deploy services, or are they relying on external organizations that they might be used to, have more credibility? There's a risk factor there for them as well. But I think, based on what you're saying, is put some reliance on your people, work within your borders for data, and try and create an ecosystem for build AI for good.
I'm happy that Barbados they are taking steps into building this locally. Yeah, I think that's the best thing to do. Trust me, procuring all these solutions, I don't have any problem with them, but I think it's important for you to build capacity locally because we're talking about the leap in technology. If you don't have capacity built locally, you cannot grow. You keep getting fed by big organizations. People just learn a certain stack of technology and that's it. But when you start building, that's when innovation comes into play. People start thinking outside the box, start coming up with ideas, using this technology to do things differently. Yeah, critical.
Well, thank you so much, Abdul. And, it's been very insightful talking to you. The Caribbean, the developing world, we're at a critical juncture as it relates to AI. AI is making fast pace in the developed world, North America, Canada, and much of Europe. But the developing world, there's a vast opportunity. There's a vast opportunity to use AI for good, as we've been discussing here this evening. AI, as we know, could be used not for good. The Nicki Minaj example was pretty interesting. But I know for sure that the key thing is to get the policymakers on board, as you correctly stated, having those policymakers understand the importance of AI, but also, too, as we're in a situation in the Caribbean where we're looking at employment, employability, young people coming out of school and not wanting to be burdened onto the government, so to speak. There's an opportunity here for the Caribbean to pilot certain projects to become a technology hub. Certain jurisdictions can become technology hubs, creating vast avenues for growth, vast avenues for development, but also, too, a really great earning potential for not just young people, but for anyone really and truly who wants to get involved in this space and to capitalize on the opportunities that are available within the space. And AI particularly provides these opportunities, but more importantly, AI for good from an economic development perspective, from a social enterprise perspective, provides these wonderful opportunities. So we want to thank you very much, Abdul, for sharing your insights into this topic. We very much enjoyed the conversation here with you this evening, and hopefully in the future we could have you back and we could have some more engaging conversations.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you so much.
All right, take care.
All right, bye-bye.